Imagine having the time and money to follow your passions and live life on your own terms. Welcome to Podcasting Mastery, where you'll learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle. Let's grab a cool tropical drink and then join James, Kimberly, and the Turtle in the Secret Beach Hut Studio.
Yes, this is James Martell along with Kimberly Juchnowski.
Hello.
And we are tucked into the Secret Beach Hut Studio, and we are so glad you've decided to join us today. This week, we are going to continue our conversation about developing a lifestyle business so we can all spend less time doing business and more time enjoying our families, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to us the most. It's for these reasons we focus on strategies for both developing a passive monthly income stream and passive ways of developing new clients and customers for your business. Kimberly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you, James?
Very well, thank you. And I do understand that we have a very special guest joining us today.
We do indeed. Today we have Kevin Koskella joining us. Kevin is the co-host of the Freedom Lovin Podcast, a home for those that value freedom as their number one asset in life. The show is about creating as much freedom as possible in a life via passive income business, traveling as often and with as few restrictions as possible, keeping and protecting assets, shredding the societal programming that is likely holding you back, and building a freedom in an unfree world.
Sounds like a perfect topic for podcasting mastery. Why don't you do us a favor, Kimberly? Push the button, play us a little bit of music to set the mood for the show, and then we'll definitely get digging in. Now, Kevin, ever since he turned his love for competitive swimming into a profitable business in 2003, he's been excited about earning income online and maximizing freedom levels. Today, Kevin is committed to helping others do the same with their life's passions. By harnessing the power of online marketing, Kevin partners with idea-driven people to develop membership sites, ebooks, and other high-value niche marketing sites that generate income and thought leadership. Leading by example, Kevin provides expertise and guidance to those wanting to break free from the 9-to-5 office culture and pursue the life they want to be living, building freedom in an unfree world. Kevin, welcome to Podcasting Mastery.
Thanks, James. Great to be here.
Now, I understand, before we dig into this, I understand you live in beautiful San Diego, California, a city that I absolutely love. Before we dig in, though, tell us about, I'm interested in hearing more about swimming and how you turned it into a profitable business, your love of swimming. And take us back to when you did that back in 2009, and then take a couple minutes and share your personal story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get into that story, just want to say that I live wherever I am. So I may be in San Diego right now, but I consider myself a permanent traveler. And so I don't necessarily live in San Diego, although I love spending time here. So as far as how I started the swimming business, I was working in the corporate world and really unhappy. I bounced from a few different companies. I was doing sales, marketing, account management, and always having a boss, always spending a lot of my time in a cubicle. And I was not happy with that life. I didn't feel like I was very free, because most of my days were taken up with having to be at a certain location within a certain time. And so I was looking for more freedom, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I got laid off, which I was really happy about at the time. And that led to me looking for another job, because I thought that's what you do. You just have to go out and find another job, get a source of income, and live the American dream, so to speak. And but as I was interviewing around, I just was really unhappy with all the possibilities of jobs and the facing the going back into another cubicle situation, another 8-to-5 type of thing. So I started just doing some things that I like to do on the side as I was looking. Like I started coaching masters swimming, which is 18 and over, competitive kind of fitness and competitive swimming, and I really enjoyed that. And then I started getting into personal training, just helping people to get fit, and really enjoyed that. And so eventually I decided that I wasn't going to go back to the corporate world. And so that was kind of how Try Swim Coach came about. I was I started giving swim lessons to increase my income a little bit. And that was very enjoyable, but I knew that wasn't a sustainable career forever. And I was mostly working with adults that were training for triathlons. Mm-hmm. And now I had done some triathlons in the past, but I've never been a competitive triathlete. Just kind of dabbled in it, but I definitely know how to help people out in terms of getting their swim up to speed and to get ready for a distance race. So I started doing that, like live coaching, and then I built a website just to kind of advertise that business, and started learning about internet marketing and how it would be nice to have something that would provide passive income as opposed to always having to be there. And so that's how it got started. I started with an ebook and wrote an ebook about how to train for a triathlon in swimming, and I started getting a little following. This is back in the days when AdWords, I was getting clicks for about 5 to 10 cents.
The good old days.
The good old days, yeah, where you didn't have to figure anything out. You just put your ads up, and people show up to your website and they opt into your newsletter.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's quite a story. We have a lot in common. I got started way back in 2002 when actually I got started in '99, but I wrote my first ebook in 2002. So, and I'm a big fan of passive income, as I know our listeners are as well. What inspired you, if I could ask you, to launch the Freedom Lovin Podcast? Give us some background on that.
Yeah, well, like probably almost everybody else on your podcast and most people listening, I did read The 4-Hour Workweek in around 2007, and I thought the book was something that I should have written like years before that, because I already had that in my mind, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. I just never was able to put it into words, and I love the idea of traveling and still running your business and still doing work. And not the old school idea of like working your whole life and then retiring at 65 and having a few years to explore the world. I never thought that was interesting. So the 4-Hour Workweek was a huge influence on that whole idea. So I started traveling and continuing to run my business, and that was working out pretty well. And so I went to a few different places, and then at some point, I just decided to start a blog to kind of just write about my travels and do little videos and stuff like that. Like the first year or maybe 2 years, it was just me, and like my parents were reading it and maybe a couple friends, and that's about it. So there was I had no clue or no intention of even, monetizing it. It was just something that I started for really my own benefit to log this stuff. And if anybody wants to read it, that's cool. But so then after I did that for maybe, I guess it was about a year and a half. And then I love podcasting. I've been doing podcasting since about 2009. I started a podcast with Try Swim Coach for a swimming podcast. And I always wanted, as a kid, to be on the radio. Like, I'm kind of an introverted guy, but for some reason I thought, I could really express myself on the radio. And but I never really did. I never pursued that. But then when this whole idea of podcasting came up, I was really excited about it. I had a friend that was doing the Internet Business Mastery podcast, and I loved that show. And so it really encouraged me to do my own thing. And so then when I was doing the Freedom Lovin blog, I just decided to, why not add in a podcast? I already know how to do it. I can just start talking about the same things I'm writing about and get guests on the show, get friends, maybe have access to some people that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Excellent. So we've seen business owners start podcasts for all kinds of reasons, whether it be advocacy, to generate leads, build a personal or corporate brand, or generate sales, all kinds of reasons. So from a business perspective, why did you launch the Freedom Lovin podcast?
Yeah. So like I said, I had no intention of monetizing. So there wasn't really a business plan going in. And I, listened to some of your other shows and people talking about the kind of methodical way of doing podcasts, and what you guys have on your side, I think looks awesome on how to set up a podcast, like the no fail idea, which is something I wish I would have done. But, as I was going, after a while, I was doing, and as you know, podcasting takes a lot of time. And I don't really like to work for free necessarily. Mm-hmm. I don't really like having passion projects that don't really pay off. So I decided, a couple months ago that I'm going to be doing, taking on some clients, helping people with their businesses, since it's something that I've done. And, particularly people that have ideas on membership sites. And so I've been focused on my interviews on anyone that has sort of automated their business in that realm and sort of, kind of created freedom in their life with their business. And so that's kind of my monetization plan. And that's sort of what I'm doing now is getting in there and, talking to people about how to build a membership site. And I have a lot of little tricks that it allows you to do it in a way that is much easier than what people were doing in the past. So I'm pretty excited about that these days.
Now, you mentioned you said goodbye, or you're not going back to the corporate world. And I know a lot of our podcasting friends are in a similar boat. They're still locked into their jobs, but they've got this plan to break out of that in exactly the same way that you've done that. So what was the passion for you to actually make that decision? Or talk about, because that's a big leap for people. That's a big scary monster to actually do it. But take us through the process that you went through to actually make that leap.
Well, the first thing is I really am not someone that can have a boss. I really can't stand having a boss. I mean, I know that probably most people listening can relate to that, but the idea of freedom is the most important thing to me. And so I never really got used to being someone like an employee. I just didn't take to it. And I had problems with bosses. I almost got fired from one of my jobs. I was lucky they switched me to a different department, and I ended up having a different boss, and that saved me from getting fired. And so a lot of it is my kind of rebellious, independent spirit that just kind of forced it. I couldn't, it was like I became unemployable because I just couldn't hack it anymore. It wasn't something that I could see myself even remotely doing. And I would rather work for minimum wage than to go back to having a nice cushy job and working for somebody like that. But the second part is this is 12, 13, 14 years ago. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that really influenced me a lot because he lays out in the book about the difference between being an employee, being self-employed, and then owning a business. And there's some pretty huge differences. But even though I read that, so that motivated me to kind of pursue something in the business realm as opposed to going back to a job, being an employee. Even though I read that, I went right into the being self-employed. That was my first jump into that world, which looking back on it, I wish I would have gone right to starting a business. And the big difference is being self-employed, you have to be there at all times to earn the money. Whereas owning a business, your business can make money with you not being there. So that eventually became much more appealing to me.
And it should be appealing to most people that are listening, actually. I know James started working for himself, years ago. How long ago, James? Like 20 years ago?
Yeah, at least probably 25 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, Kevin, totally unemployable. If you ever offer me a job, anybody, don't hire me.
Yeah, I love that.
We will not get along well. I don't show up on time.
Yeah.
I don't listen to instructions. I give instructions well, but I don't like to be told what to do.
I love that term unemployable because it's so accurate as soon as you make the switch. I started being self-employed, I guess, back in a little bit before 2012, but officially in 2012 when I moved to Thailand to go completely online and really get away from having to go into a job. And you can't go back after that. Once you do that, it's game over and you do become unemployable. When I come back to Canada, I've worked at a pub that I've worked at over the years just as like a social job, but in the everyday scenario, Monday to Friday, there's no way that I could be, driving to an office every day and sitting at a desk. Not going to happen. So
yeah, you'll start dreaming of the beaches of Thailand.
Yeah, exactly. ADD comes in full power there, especially being in front of a computer.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit, Kevin, and could you tell us a little bit or share with our audience about the format of your show, how often you air episodes, do you do it regularly? How long are your shows? Do you keep them short, longer, or just sort of let it flow? And then also dive in a little bit about where you find your guests.
Yeah, so my intention early on was to do a podcast every 2 weeks, and I did stick with that for a while. And then I've gone through periods of time where I just haven't had time to do it because, like I said, I wasn't monetizing it, so it wasn't priority number one. But what I found, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, is that the more consistent you are, the more consistent your listenership will be. So I've really tried to make it a point to do one podcast a week. And when I get busy, like I am right now with other projects, I'll just drop it for a certain, maybe a couple of weeks and then get back to it when I have more time. But what I found that if I start pressuring myself into any kind of a schedule, like one, like I have to do it every week, I start to lose interest in it. It's sort of like that inner task master where you like I'm almost beating myself up to get a show out, and then the shows aren't going to be as high quality as when I'm actually doing it because I really want to do it. So at this point, it's a couple times a month, and as far as getting guests, it's very easy because I have a lot of people contacting me from just all walks of life and just asking me if they can be on the show. So it's great because I don't have to really go and look. And when I go out and meet people in real life, it's a great thing to offer. If it's something that I'm interested in, I'll offer them to be a guest on the show. So it's a nice tool to have when you're just out there networking or meeting people. So there's an endless supply of guests because my topic is freedom, and that can be applied to any level. I mean, I don't just talk about business. I talk about like philosophy and just freedom of movement and anything to do with freedom. So it's not focused on one thing. So so the guest thing is not a problem. I think early on I was emailing a lot of people and asking them to come on, but that doesn't even need to happen anymore.
Mm-hmm. I see it's actually time for us to take a short break. And when we return, we will talk about the exact steps Kevin Koskella took to launch and grow his podcast. So don't go away.
More Podcasting Mastery with James and Kimberly from the Secret Beach Hut Studio after this.
Is your website out of date? Is it mobile friendly? Why not let us design your website and we'll make sure it looks the way it should on all platforms and devices, including iPhones, iPads, and other smartphones and tablets. We'll even optimize your site for search engines and make it easy for you to share your content and products on social sites such as Facebook and Twitter with built-in sharing features. For more information and to schedule your no-obligation free consultation, go to podcastingmastery.com/website. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/website.
Would you love to spend less time doing business and more time enjoying your family, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to you most? Whether you're looking to develop a passive monthly income stream or you're looking for passive ways of generating new clients and customers for your business, James Martell's free podcasting webinar is the place to start. James Martell, an 11-year podcasting veteran, will show you how to quickly and easily launch a podcast that will impress all who hear it to attract all of the clients and customers you need, and how to do it all in less than 1 hour a week using equipment you already own. Register now for this lifestyle and business-changing webinar at podcastingmastery.com/webinar. We'll see you there. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/webinar.
Is your podcast getting bogged down because of time or technical issues? Would you prefer to let someone else handle all of the production and technical details? Our virtual producer works remotely from a studio to provide you with production, technical, and creative assistance. Our virtual producer will call you and your guest by phone or Skype, and then record, produce, and upload each episode with SEO-friendly show notes to your website for automated distribution to social media and the major podcast directories. Sound intriguing? Visit podcastingmastery.com/virtual producer to learn more. That's www.podcastingmastery.com/virtual producer.
Now back to Podcasting Mastery from the Secret Beach Hut Studio.
Yes, I'm here with my co-host, Kimberly Juchnowski, and we're talking to Kevin Koskella of the Freedom Lovin Podcast. Tell us, if you would, Kevin, about the launch of your show. It sounded like it happened very casually, and it's something that you do when you feel like, which I can appreciate that a lot. And then talk a little bit about, were you nervous about launching, or is it something that you just kind of morphed into?
Well, I started my Try Swim Coach podcast, like I said, back in 2009. So I kind of got the feel for what it's like. I made all my mistakes then, I think, or I made a lot of my mistakes then. And I figured out how to launch it, how to get it on iTunes, all that stuff, all the technical stuff with Try Swim Coach. And, I had some horrible podcasts early on with that one. I mean, they were just awful. And so I was able to improve that to a certain point and get it to where it's a decent sounding podcast. So when I started Freedom Lovin, it was, things had become a lot easier between like 2009 and I think 2013 is when I started Freedom Lovin, and a lot of things became easier as far as getting things started. But I didn't do a big launch. I didn't send out a bunch of emails. I know there's a lot of ways to do that. I know that there's some really good ways, and I'm sure you teach a lot of these ways on how to really get a lot right up front. Mm-hmm. But I casually launched it. I just started interviewing people, getting it out there, sending it out to my friends, and getting people to like them, and just asking for reviews, and that works to a certain point. Asking people to review the show. But I could really use a service like yours and really get it to where, I get recognized in iTunes and things like that, because I think there's a lot of little things that you can do to rank your podcast. And, that's something that it's you need to learn it and you got to do it, unless you just want to do it as a hobby. So that's a different thing.
Definitely. And everybody can learn about that through the Podcasting Mastery course. James has laid that out for everybody. So to all our listeners, definitely check us out. I've learned that business owners who are considering starting a podcast often wonder if they'll have enough topics to cover. You covered this a little bit already, that you don't have to find guests and, things just come up. But what's your experience been in selecting your topics, and do you think you would ever run out?
Well, with Freedom Lovin, I'll never run out of topics, because freedom is a big part of everyone's life. Whether it's lacking or you're achieving it, it's going to be there. The topic thing can go on and on forever. There's a lot of ways to do it, depending on what your niche is. Because my other podcast is in swimming, so obviously there are kind of more of a limited number of things to talk about there. But so what I do there with my Try Swim Coach podcast is I have a combination of guests and then shows where we do lists. So it's like the old format of doing blog posts where you do the top 5 ways to whatever. That's kind of how we do that podcast. And we can take topics that we've covered before and do them in a different way. But there are, even with swimming, the topics do go on. And a great way to find new topics is just to talk to your subscribers, whether it's in your newsletter subscribers or people that are visiting your site. They can tell you what kind of challenges they're going through. That allows you to learn about different topics you can cover, and then what kind of products you might want to develop to serve the needs of these people that are telling you what they need. So I think that's the best way. I've done everything on that podcast. I've done everything from interview people that are star triathletes that are accomplishing, they're like professionals, to interviewing people that are just starting out and they're doing 1 or 2 or 3 races and they talk about their experiences. And so it really isn't too difficult to come up with a number of topics. And then with Freedom Lovin, there's the traveling. I mean, the traveling can go on forever. And then there's all the business tips. There's the philosophy. I bring on some of my friends that are really deep into philosophy of freedom and liberty and things like that. And that can go on forever. So yeah, so I don't, there's no challenge there finding topics to talk about.
What's been some of your biggest challenges along the way?
Biggest challenges? Well, sometimes it's difficult. So what you hear a lot, if you listen to a lot of business podcasts, you will hear a lot of people talk about making offers. They'll make offers to their audience. Go here, go to this site and download whatever, this ebook. Depending on your niche, that may not work, because if you're selling internet, like how to make money online, it's likely that most of your listeners are spending a lot of their days behind their computer, and maybe when they're listening to you, they're not. Maybe they're on a walk or something, but they're going to be back at their computer in a short period of time. Whereas if you have another niche, like my other one is swimming, they are not necessarily at their computers. And so if I'm making offers to them, they're not just sitting there waiting for me and typing in the URL. So it's really important that I get them on my newsletter. So I have a one focus thing there. It's just the only thing that I try to get them to do is to opt into my newsletter, because if I can get them to do that, then I can talk to them, then I can send them emails. But if I'm asking them to buy something on my podcast or take any sort of action, it's really, really difficult. And so that's one thing I think that was a struggle for a while, that I was like, how do I do this? Because it seemed like it was so easy for all the internet business people, like selling how to make money. It was like, yeah, just tell them to go there, and then they do it, and you get thousands of downloads, and there you go. And it's like, nope, that certainly doesn't work in a non-business podcast.
So why do you think that podcasting is such a solid approach to marketing a business online?
Well, there's still a barrier to entry. It's obviously gotten easier over the last few years to start a podcast, but there's a barrier to entry. There's way more bloggers than there are podcasters, because there's very little barrier to entry with blogging. So if you start a podcast, you are separating yourself out from everyone else just by having a podcast. And maybe at some point in time, that may not be true, but I think that it is right now. It is still the case, and you can distinguish yourself, especially if you're in a crowded niche. I did another podcast, and this is a whole nother topic, but I did another podcast. I have a good friend that's a psychologist, And so, my background is fitness. So we combine these two ideas, and we have fitness psychology for fitness. And we had a podcast that we did for a while on that called Healthy Mind, Fit Body. And that's something that, that can come about combining these ideas like that, like combining the two kind of different concepts and then creating a podcast out of it. We were the only ones doing that. So we kind of made ourselves stand out in a field that, if you just look at weight loss or something, there's a million people doing things, but ours was very unique. So I think that's the big key, is that you can stand out from the crowd.
So let me throw this one out to you. If you had to start your podcast over again, what would you do differently? And you can pick either podcast or both. Yeah,
I'm going to go with my Freedom Lovin Podcast, because with Try Swim Coach, I was one of the only people in triathlon doing a podcast at the time. So it was like I just got a bunch of listeners, because people that were searching for that, they went to my show. So that was not hard. There was nothing difficult at all about ranking for that show. But for Freedom Lovin, going back, I wish I did the first 5 shows differently. I really think that starting out in a way of where you get people that you're really trying to target. So get really focused on your target market and get those people that you think are the key players, or the people that are really doing things in that niche, and try to get them on your first 5 shows, and then have them link back to you. Start right away with asking for reviews, because you can get if you get that new and noteworthy listing, then you're going to get so many more subscribers right up front. So I think it's like the first month that you're on iTunes.
Yeah, first 60 days.
60 days, right? Yeah. So I think that is the key, and that's something I totally didn't do, and now it's like way beyond that time. So yeah, I do think that is the important thing. If you're going to start one, kind of follow those guidelines and try to get on that new and noteworthy. It's not that hard. I mean, I've seen people do it even in, how to make money online. I have had friends that have done that recently, and that's a super crowded niche, but you can get there by following the right format,
Not that difficult, something we spend a lot of time on. You also mentioned, figuring out exactly who your audience is and who you're going to be talking to. That's something that I've found over the years, that if you can do that, you are so much further ahead, because you know exactly who you're talking to. You know the problems they have, the solutions you offer, and it just everything just flows so much easier. Let's do this. We're just about coming up against the end of the show here. Let's jump into what we call the speed round, and we don't prepare you for this at all. Mm-hmm. And it's a series of 10 quick questions, and we'll kick it off with number 1: Windows or Mac?
Mac.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew you were going to be a Mac guy. I just knew it. iPhone or Android?
Oh, I just switched to iPhone. I've been Android for 10 years.
Interesting. Cat or dog person?
A dog.
Favorite book?
How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Browne.
Wow. Okay. How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Henry Browne. Okay.
Harry Browne. Yeah.
Harry Browne. Okay. Your favorite vacation spot, and this is the perfect question for you, and why?
Well, yeah, that is a really tough one. But,
yeah.
But I was actually just emailing with a friend about this idea. It's election year in the U.S. and
yes.
It just brings out the worst in just about everybody.
Uh-huh.
So I was saying I want to get back to. I went to Bali in 2012, and it's like Bali has this feel of like there's nothing really matters there. I mean, it's so peaceful, it's so relaxing. And it's just a really nice place to get away. So I was thinking, like, if I could get there in like late October and spend about a month there and get away from the U.S. and all the madness here, that would be awesome. So I'm going to go with Bali for that.
Love that. It's like stepping into a dream. Bali is. I feel.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a great
magical
way to
place.
Yeah.
And you mentioned U.S. elections, and Kimberly bit her tongue right there. And her and I are of course Canadians peering into the fishbowl, and of course we get CNN and all your news up here. So we've had a few we have different opinions on who should be the next president.
Yeah.
Won't mention any names, but it's definitely interesting to watch.
So number 6, James.
Are you a techie or a non-techie?
Non-techie.
Your favorite success quote?
Favorite success quote. Okay, I've got one. This is going to be probably a little bit outside the box, but nothing diminishes anxiety as much as action.
Good one.
Yeah, that is good.
What's a tool that you use every single day that you would absolutely hate to live without?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I mean, just for my laptop, but I want to go a little bit deeper than just laptop, and I'm going to say Evernote.
Evernote. Okay, there's been a few. Those come up a few times.
I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Another great question for you, Kevin. What do you do for fun?
Well, okay, beyond traveling, because we've talked about traveling, that's definitely something I do for fun. On like a day-to-day basis, I'm really into fitness. I love going out in the sunshine, on the beach, running sprints, doing anything that I can do to kind of keep my body fit. I just really enjoy it. I used to be a swimmer. I haven't been able to do that much lately because I've got some shoulder issues, but that's another thing that I really enjoy, and just kind of keeping my body and my mind active.
And this is the last question, what is the most rewarding thing that you've been able to do for someone else because of your podcast?
Well, I got an email, a couple months ago from somebody that lives in the Netherlands, and she was just getting ready to take off on a kind of a trip to kind of try out this digital nomad thing. And she said that my podcast was what caused her to even think about doing this, and that's why she was doing it. And she's got a web design business and was going to take that on the road. And she said how inspired she was by listening to my podcast. So that was really awesome. And now she's doing some web design work for me. So that's been really cool.
That's great. That is very cool when that kind of thing happens. Do us a favor, share with our podcasting friends where they can learn more about both of your podcasts and where they can learn more about anything, products or services that you have to offer.
Yeah. freedomlovin.com is my site, and my email is kevin@freedomlovin.com. I'd love to hear from anyone there. If you're interested in the swimming stuff, it's tryswimcoach.com. That's the website, and then you just you can just find the podcast right on that site. And I think that's about it. I'm offering a free consulting session right now. So anyone can go to my website, freedomlovin.com, and see that there's a little box there that has my info where you can get that. So
terrific. So, and we'll make sure that we've got links to all those resources on within our show notes as well. Kevin, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our podcasting friends? Maybe words of encouragement for those who are just getting started, or even for those who are already well underway and successful.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that wherever you are is where you need to be. And not to look too much at like someone that's doing way better than you and getting discouraged, because that's easy to do. Is to look at all the podcasters out there. You look at some of the top podcasters, and sometimes it can be discouraging because they're putting out these numbers. It's like, how many $100,000 do they make per month? And it just seems overwhelming. But I think it's important to go, like, if you're just starting out, if you made $1 of passive income last month, that's awesome. Like that's a great start, and just kind of ride on that, and not to get too overwhelmed or do too much of the comparison thing.
Very good advice. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your personal story and for being so generous in sharing all of your podcasting knowledge and obviously your passion and your experiences.
And to all of our podcasting friends, a reminder, if you have your own podcast or podcasting tool that you'd like us to feature here on the show, simply send us the details to feature me at podcastingmastery.com, and we may do exactly that.
And if you're wondering what it takes to develop a profitable show of your own, I put together a very special report just for you called The Core Elements of the No Fail Podcast, and you can download that at podcastingmastery.com/no fail.
If there's something here that we mentioned that you missed, keep in mind that we do keep all the show notes for you, including links to Kevin's podcast. And you can find the show notes for this episode at podcastingmastery.com/PM021.
Kimberly, thank you so much. Kevin, you were wonderful. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks to both of you. Really enjoyed being on the show.
That's wonderful. Great to have you on. And, of course, to all of our podcasting friends, we'll catch you in the next episode of Podcasting Mastery.
Thanks for joining us in the Secret Beach Hut studio. If you are ready to start your podcasting adventure and to learn the secrets of creating a profitable podcast, James Martell has boiled it down for you to the 12 core elements of the No Fail podcast in his most recent free report. Available for a limited time at podcastingmastery.com/no fail. But don't wait, this report won't be free for long. So be sure to grab your free copy today to learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle at podcastingmastery.com/no-fail.